scared for reals.
Hey, it's Chris O'Neill.
And Adam Perry.
All right, the new Omen, well, the first Omen, just released in theaters here, and it's actually the 6th installment of the Omen franchise. This is the prequel, obviously, to the 1976 Omen film. You have Father Brennan. You remember Father Brennan from the first Omen movie?
Yes.
A little bit younger.
Yep.
There's not really too much of an age difference here, but he presses Father Harris about a photo of a baby, Skiana, but Father Harris is unable to speak of it, so he mentioned it was like an unnatural birth. That's all we get at the beginning of the movie. And, of course, on the church steps, there's a big accident. A pipe falls, and, well, a portion of Harris's skull comes off, and that's how the movie starts.
All right.
Yeah, so even revealing that it was an unnatural birth was too much. You know how the Omen movies go. You say too much, you're part of the plot, and you will die.
Yeah.
But that's how the movie starts off. And again, spoiler alerts. We're going to be delving into this movie from start to finish. So if you haven't seen the movie, watch it first. And if you're curious to know what our thoughts and opinions are, by all means, chime in. So this takes place in Rome, 1971. We have an American. She's trying to become an ordained nun. Okay. And the cardinal, played by Bill Nighy, you remember him?
Yep.
He's always fun to watch, even though he's kind of wasted in this movie. But she arrives to take her vows, and then when Bill Nighy, the cardinal, brings her to where she's supposed to take her vows. She meets a young artist named Carlita, an eccentric roommate named Luz, an odd-mannered Angelica, and of course the cardinal, and Sister Sylvia, the abbess. Now, Carlita shows Margaret a drawing of figures, restraining a woman onto a bed. And that kind of grabs your attention. You see all these artwork from the kids in this hallway. You know how they always do that in schools and everything. It's quite alarming and gets Margaret's attention, that's for sure.
I think it would get just about anybody's attention.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So she kind of forms a bond because she's had similar experiences in the past. Margaret does, and Bill Nighy's character is kind of her mentor, kind of rescued her from that because she's an orphan and everything. So she can really relate to these orphan kids.
Yep.
In this cathedral where she's prepping to take her vows. So I'm going to add here before I continue that the movie's 2 hours long, and 2 hours is not a horrible running time, but in a horror movie, most cases, a horror movie doesn't need to be that long. If there's enough plot and interest. I mean, the first Omen is like 9 minutes shorter.
Yeah,
and I mean that moved. You weren't going, oh my goodness gracious. There were a few times where I was kind of like, where is this going? Because Margaret, she meets up with Luz, her room. She's kind of like her roommate. Mm-hmm. She's getting ready to take her vows, so she wants to have one last fling on the town. So they go to this nightclub, and obviously Margaret's never really drank before, so she gets drunk. She's dancing with this boy, then blacks out mysteriously. It's like, did this really need to be in the movie? I mean, I guess to build her character up a little bit, but to me it was kind of unnecessary. I know Adam
I haven't seen
that.
it yet,
so I'm kind of a rhetorical question I'm asking.
Yeah.
But I mean, you watch a lot of horror movies, Adam,
right?
It just didn't seem to fit in the plot with her character. I guess to show her aloofness, but that's not really the main focus of the story.
Right. I mean, what I've noticed a lot with horror movies is so much of it at times gets cut. So, I mean, being it's already a 2+ hour movie, maybe there was a cut, if there's when this comes out streaming and they put the
unrated director's
the
cut.
unrated director's cut, maybe there'll be more context to this scene and impact on the plot. But again, you don't know.
There were people that would probably argue with me on this, and again, we all have our opinions, and
right.
I just didn't think it helped move the story along.
Right.
So she blacks out, and might I add, this is like a big sinister conspiracy to bring about the birth of the Antichrist. You got to remember, this is what the movie's about, and any of this added stuff kind of takes away attention from that.
Right.
And to me, I know, like, if Hammer Studios helmed this, it would have been a much tighter, more focused plot. Because you can, like, different montages, you can tell a story in different montages. And even my wife admits it seems like Hollywood has lost the art of the montages.
Art of the montage or maybe just terrible editing, man. Again, because it's so new, and we just I know we talked about it on the Kong episode, and bringing it back to the new Ghostbusters movies, there's clearly cuts in there that were just cut just to be cut,
right?
And so there's plot holes in there, and there's not really there's unexplained stuff, and that comes down to poor editing,
right?
So again, I have not seen the first Omen yet. I plan to see it. But again, with this nightclub scene that you're talking about, it could just be a victim of poor editing. That maybe it does impact the plot in some way, but they just made a bad cut, and then we're like, the hell with it. Let's just leave it like that.
It just seems like they're in a rush, even though sometimes there's like years in between certain films.
Yeah.
And to be fair. Arkasha Stevenson, she also co-wrote the screenplay. This is her very first movie.
Yeah.
And I do want to add, there's a lot of negativity I had with this movie, but there are some positives. I mean, let's face it, Arkasha, she has a good sense of atmosphere. I mean, she has a good sense of it. There's some good shots, good homages to Argento films, even Possession. There's a certain scene where you see her kind of doing these really involuntary movements, which remind you of Isabella Adjani in Possession. There are some good homages to classic horror films, which sometimes that doesn't always work, but in this movie it was effective because Argento's really good with colors and atmosphere.
Right.
So, I mean, there are some positives to this movie. I don't completely hate it. It's probably, I haven't seen the Omen 2 or the Omen 3. Isn't there a fourth Omen movie? And then there was the reboot in 2006.
Something like that, yeah.
I've only seen the reboot in 2006 and this one. I have not seen the other three Omen films, but I mean, it's not as good as the original,
right?
Yeah.
All right. So, if you don't mind, I don't mean to cut you off. Let me ask you this, and I'm just curious because I haven't seen this movie yet. One of my biggest issues when it comes to making sequels, especially horror sequels, so many years after its original has come out.
Yeah.
I think one of the biggest failures to these 40, 30 year sequels is catching the vibe and the spirit of the original. So, which is one of the reasons I know a lot of people don't like the Halloween 2018, but I think one of the few things that David Gordon Green did well, he did capture, to a degree, the John Carpenter feeling of the original Halloween. So I'm going to ask you, this movie compared to the Richard Donner classic, does it catch the same vibe? Does it feel like an Omen movie? Does it feel like it belongs in this universe? Again,
I've only seen the first Omen movie out of the original because I think the other ones came out in late 70s, early 80s. I didn't watch those. I just watched the first one. It doesn't have the same energy, same vibe. Again, she threw in some Argento stuff. She threw in some homages to Possession, but it just didn't have the same oomph
It didn't have the same feel as the Richard Donner movie.
No, because the Richard Donner movie kind of moved. It had momentum. It had suspense. It told the story quickly, and then it kept moving. This story, like the whole nightclub sequence, I got to get back into talking about the actual plot of the film, but that whole nightclub sequence just kind of didn't feel right. It kind of took me out of the movie a little bit. It felt like it belonged in a different movie. You know what I mean? Yeah. That's the way I felt about it. And again, I'm sure there are some internet warriors out there that would disagree, and they probably hate me for it, but I'm not going to say they're wrong. I'm probably not right either. It's just all opinions.
Yeah. I mean, everybody. Yeah, it's subjective.
So she blacks out when she's dancing with this boy named. It doesn't matter his name. I can't really pronounce Italian names, but her memory's faded. And at the orphanage, she gets up in the morning, and obviously she's got this massive hangover, so she's not really feeling like being a nun today. Right? She's got even the kids are just saying, "You look so tired," and so she kind of just steps away, takes a few minutes. And she happens to witness a woman giving birth where a demonic hand sprawls out of her birth canal. Then she blacks out again. So there's also, with the hand, you see images of some sort of demonic creature. Rosemary's Baby. Remember how you kind of see like the demonic hand? You kind of see what alludes to be like a demon of some kind,
right? Like
a furry demon. So you get that. You don't really get to see it, which is I'm glad she didn't show it. Which is again a tip off to Polanski, who Rosemary's Baby is one of the greatest horror films I've ever seen. It's that vibe. The whole ending. You're just like, oh my god. It's just a classic.
Yeah.
So she blacks out again a second time. And then she starts forming a bond. I mentioned earlier, she meets this 11-year-old named Carlita, and she kind of bonds with her because she felt kind of like the same way when she was growing up, like an outsider, always mistreated, and she's even alluded that she was kind of tied down and stuff like that. She kept having like nightmares about it. So she forms a bond with this 11-year-old girl, Carlita, and she notices all the mistreatment from the nuns. They lock her in an isolated room and kept her away from others, which, if I was, I'm a Christian, and if I was studying to be a priest and I was seeing a lot of this stuff taking place, I'm like, something's rotten in the state of Denmark here. That's not what priests and nuns do.
Right.
You know what I mean? Locking kids away. Now, she mentions to Carlita she was similar during her childhood and everything like that. And then she gets a meeting with Father Brennan, because Father Brennan kind of disappears. He's in the beginning, opening sequence, and you're like, okay, what's going to happen with Father Brennan? Well, he pops up again, and he meets with Margaret and says not to trust anyone at the cathedral and to stay away from Carlita. So Margaret spots Angelica with Carlita and is shown a drawing of a pregnant woman being restrained. So she's had like drawings like this before, women being restrained and stuff like that. So now pregnant women.
Yeah.
So a little bit more of the plot is being revealed. And again, to me, if Hitchcock had done something like this, it would have been an awesome build-up, because Hitchcock was great at building up, and he'd have a great reward at the end.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's just kind of like, okay, it's slowly moving along here. But Father Brennan, trying to urge caution not to trust Carlita. So Angelica's kind of this sister who's got a lot of mental problems, seemingly.
Yep.
But you remember in the original Exorcist where the nanny, I did this for you.
Yeah.
The same exact thing, only instead of just hanging herself, she douses herself in flames. this Angelica, the sister
Oh,
Angelica.
so they basically copied probably the most iconic scene from the Omen. The original Omen, but instead of hanging,
you got to give it more pizzazz. So let's light her on fire. So she lights herself on fire and hangs herself, freaks everyone out. Yeah, literally the same line. It's all for you, except for Damien isn't mentioned.
Right. Yeah,
but so at this point, Margaret's like, okay, maybe this Father Brennan guy isn't a crazy guy after all. Because you remember in the original Omen, Father Brennan is just like a wacko.
Yeah.
I mean, completely whacked out. And I guess this movie kind of shows it, but the guy who portrays him, is Irish actor, is definitely not a wacko. He doesn't have it. He doesn't look whacked out on drugs or anything.
Right. Yeah.
like I mean, the original Omen, the priest is the guy is definitely looks like a whack job who's had too many drugs.
Right.
I hate to say it, but that's just the way it is. So Margaret decides to meet up with Father Brennan after all. And he believes that Carlita is the Antichrist, and the church has been curating one for years and shows Margaret photos of proof. Now, she refuses to believe it, but accepts to get Carlita's files for him. So she's like, why would the church literally like try to get the Antichrist, and the whole thing is Father Brennan reveals that they want to bring an Antichrist so more people will come to God, which is so twisted. And it seems like kind of a weird plot point too. It's just like, I guess, the cardinal and everyone in Rome is like, yeah, this is a good idea.
Yeah,
it's like a cult.
It almost turns the church into like a government, like a political,
right.
It's like, all right, we are gonna blow up this building and blame it on them to get you feel good about your country again.
Because like there's literally no way the demon or Satan would actually be able to get that close to someone who's like a huge follower of Christ. It's just really difficult to corrupt someone who's just so pure, So these people are obviously not true followers of Christ.
I mean, again, not to turn this into a conspiracy theory debate, but it's almost like those conspiracy theories you hear about, like Pearl Harbor and 9/11, and how some theories claim that we allowed it to happen. There's actually
proof now that it has happened.
And I don't want to turn this into a conspiracy or a political debate, but again, it seems like that's what this movie is kind of going for, is that the Roman Catholic Church is trying to bring this on to
get more business for themselves.
To go into business for themselves and grow their agenda.
That's one thing I really loved about the Richard Donner film, is the fact that Satan wants to get into the political world. It's the easiest way
to
for
control
Satan.
Everything.
Yeah. It is through the political realm, and targets Gregory Peck, who's a seemingly noble politician, but he's got his flaws, and every human has flaws. That's the whole point. And humans can be vulnerable, and that's how Satan is able to corrupt.
And the sequel's kind of,
because William Holden's in the sequel, I believe, and he's a congressman or something like that.
Yeah, so. in the third one, in the third one, Sam Neill is Damien, and he's an adult and he's a politician.
Right.
Yeah,
and I think he's like a confidant to the president or something. I believe. So I mean, it's. Anyhow, I mean, that's one thing the first Omen movie really nails, is the fact that, and one a lot of people can get behind, because people really don't like how corrupt our government is.
Right.
It's even noticed even more so now than it was back in the 70s.
Right, yeah.
So So we get back to Margaret, who's kind of on the fence here. She's kind of almost at her wit's end, seeing all this, burning, hanging, and the poor child being abused, and seeing demons coming out of, being born. It's like, what the heck is going on here? Something is going on, and she's just she's got her loyalties, and they're being tested. You know what I mean?
Right.
So she confides in another father at that cathedral and asks if he knows anything about Carlita, but he dismisses it kind of like he knows something. Oh, no, I don't know anything, So she's trying to get information about Carlita, and she even tries, because she's forming a bond with Carlita herself, and even that's been a problem. But as she's trying to, get Carlita and, to trust her and everything, the sisters, the head of the sisters, Sylvia is trying to, like, Margaret, you're starting to go insane, and so she starts getting punished because she's kind of, that you play the game hot, cold, hot.
Right.
Margaret's getting warm here. Yeah. A little too warm for comfort.
Right.
So Sister Sylvia sees this, forces Margaret to leave the orphanage, and denies her vows. So Margaret leaves, but during her drive, spots the boy she had a fling with at the nightclub. And it's like, okay, this is back. Why? And I guess she wants to know what happened that night, and the guy is horrified by her, saying, "Look for the mark." And it's like, okay, look for the mark. What does that mean? And then he's hit by an oncoming truck, a big horror movie jump scare. It's going to happen to this guy. You're just like, when is it going to happen? So, he's impaled against the wall, so she tries to move him and, of course, rips off half of his body. And it's like, oh, okay. Here's the gross gore scene for no reason. And
all right, so they redid and ripped off the hanging scene from the original.
Yeah.
Now clearly they've ripped off and redone the decapitation scene from the original.
Just instead of the head, it's the
half of the
torso.
Yeah, it's original.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, a lot of Giallo reference. Remember the movie Torso?
Yeah. Torso. Yeah. Right.
So there's a lot of homages to the original as well, but they don't happen the same way.
Yeah.
So Margaret, she's just at this point completely distraught, because imagine carrying a half of a body. You see that in war movies, not
right.
It's like, what the heck is going on? So she sees her roommate Luz. These Italian names I have a hard time with. Please bear with me. So Margaret slips out as Luz is taking her vows. Where does she go? The basement.
The dreaded basement.
Yeah, the dreaded basement, to find the files. She discovers 14 different subject files, each brandished with a 666 mark. You remember, and that's another homage to the original.
Yeah.
Damien has it in his head.
Birthmark, yep.
Yeah, that's the birthmark right on his head.
Right.
So they're all named Skiana, disfigured, save for one. So she rushes off with the files, before obviously the sisters are onto her at this point. So she rushes out before, she tries to anyways. They restrain her, and then she notices the mark on the roof of Carlita's mouth. It just flashes it was a visual effect. You can literally see it appear and disappear. 666 on the roof of her mouth. Open wide.
Open wide. Wow.
So she's screaming, and she happens to notice it. So Margaret notices Carlita doesn't bear the 666 mark on her head, because at night Father Gabriel unlocks her from the prison door. I mean, she's restrained on a bed. Mm-hmm. So she unlocks the door, saves her, and then, it's revealed that Carlita doesn't bear the 666 mark on her head, despite it being in Brennan's photo. So Obviously, Carlita's not the chosen one.
Not the Antichrist.
She's not the chosen one to bear the Antichrist. And of course, she's too young. She's only 11.
Right.
So all three examine the files, and Margaret links the photo that Father Brennan has to a file, figuring out she is the baby, not Carlita. She is the baby. A hallucination shows her being impregnated by the poor demonic entity. Terrified of what's in her, she demands an abortion. Here we go. Abortion. This is like there was another movie that was done with Sylvia Sidney or Sweeney, whatever her name is. You know who I'm talking about, right?
Yep.
Yeah, there's another horror movie out there with a pregnant nun that touches on the abortion issue. And this one kind of does as well. So, on the way, the car crashes, but Margaret is unaffected. And then this is where the whole possession homage comes. She's like convulsing, like uncontrollably.
Yeah.
She's like making noises and convulsing. And so she passes out again. This is like the third time that the poor Margaret passes out. And she awakens only to reveal that she's strapped down. So this is the nightmare she's been having all along.
Right.
Where the Cardinal reveals he's planned this for years. So Bill Nighy, I mean, he's been kind of creeping in the background. I'm waiting for him to, because he's usually the bad guy in these horror movies. So you're waiting for his reveal scene. And again, to me, everything takes so long to get to the point,
right?
Which is unfortunate because there are some good atmospheric, good, shots and stuff like that. But it just so he's revealed he's been planning this for years, and you see it. It's like a ritual. It's like a cult ritual. All of the nuns are there. They're wrapped in black cloth. They're kind of waiting for this.
Yeah.
So Margaret. This is the big plot twist. Margaret is the one that must bear the Antichrist. Yeah, the nun has to be the one that has to give birth to the Antichrist, after all. So she gives birth. There's 2 children, though, a boy and a girl, because that's why they've destroyed all of these babies, is because they're all girls. They need a boy. The plot is kind of silly. Margaret has to hold it. She stabs the Cardinal. At first, I thought she was going to try to stab the baby. Like, remember Gregory Peck? This is another homage to the original. I thought she was going to try to stab Damien right there, because that's literally the kid. They name him Damien right there. So she almost kills the baby, but, the members take him back. But I thought she was going to do it right away. I think if she, stabbed Damien right away, but then again, there would be all the sequels would vanish.
No, yeah. Exactly.
They set the building on fire. Carlita saves Margaret. Carlita's been kind of lurking in the background watching all this, which is definitely going to affect her childhood from here on in.
Sure.
So she saves Margaret, and they manage to get the girl out, too. Margaret has a vision of her assaulter, the demonic jackal, burning. So the members of this church organize a secret adoption in which the boy is given to an American diplomat, Robert Thorne. Gregory Peck. You see the picture, you see the dossier.
Yeah.
It's all been planned. So years later, Margaret, Carlita, and the girl have become a happy, secluded family. But then Father Brennan arrives again. And she has like a shotgun ready to shoot Father Brennan.
Right.
But we know that's not the way he's supposed to go.
No,
he's got to get impaled.
Yep.
Brennan arrives to warn Margaret, knowing she's still alive, and says the boy has a name now, Damien, and that's how the movie ends.
Gotcha.
2 hours, though.
I was wondering when they were going to finally link this thing to the original movie.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Yeah.
I know it's linked. Everyone watching it is obviously a fan of the original Omen movie.
Right.
So you're just waiting and waiting for the thing to get connected. And again, there's nothing wrong with drawing a story out if you can make it interesting and fun.
Right.
Alfred Hitchcock was a genius at that. Psycho's almost 2 hours long.
Right.
You don't get to meet the main character of the story until 50 minutes into the movie. And anything that happened before that doesn't matter. From 50 minutes in until the end of the movie, so a whole hour, that's amazing filmmaking.
Yeah.
Bong Joon-ho did that very similar kind of plot twist with Parasite. It can be done by today's filmmakers, but for some reason, Bong Joon-ho wasn't really, I don't think, tied down to a studio during Parasite. He was during Snowpiercer. I mean, Harvey Weinstein really, that took a lot out of Bong Joon-ho from what I understand.
I imagine it did.
I want to keep an eye on Arkasha Stevenson, because this is only her first movie, and she does have some good visual stuff going on here.
Okay.
We'll have to see what she does next, because obviously an Omen movie comes out, it's probably going to be number one at the box office, or close to it. Probably be number one or number two.
Audience, yep.
It already has a dedicated following. Yeah. Kind of, even though it's like years and years. I mean, what is it? 2006 was the last Omen movie.
Yeah.
So it's like 18 years. We get another Omen movie, but it's a prequel. And there's nothing wrong. Again, I know the main purpose of these movies is to make money.
Right.
I get it. But if you're going to revisit a movie almost 50 years later in this case, because let's face it, that Omen movie in 2006 really had nothing to do with the original, because it was a reboot.
Yeah.
It was a reboot. At least make it fun.
Yeah, it's like I was saying earlier, kind of comparing, this to what David Gordon Green did with Halloween. If you're gonna, especially if it's a sequel, if it's a direct sequel to the original classic, in these cases, man, you need to really catch the vibe of what, or at least try to come close to the original vibe of what made the first movie so great.
Yes.
And if you can't do that, it's hard to have any sort of success. It just becomes a movie that flounders and disappears. And unfortunately, that's what happens with most sequels, and why most sequels aren't as good as the original, because there's a vibe, there's a feeling, there's a atmosphere to that original that made it so good.
Right.
You just can't recreate.
No, they do. We were talking about how she pays homage to like Suspiria, Dario Argento. They remade Suspiria a few years back, and just not the same type of vibe, I don't think it was that successful either, if I'm not mistaken.
It came in and it went.
Right. That's what I mean.
I'm sure. And unfortunately,
Suspiria, people still talk about to this day. It's one of the most influential horror movies.
Yeah.
There's paying homage, which she did a great job, I thought, but redoing the death sequences in a more gory fashion than the original. It's like, do it differently. What? Just do it differently. Why do the same exact things but add more gore to it? It's like, okay, just for the shock value. There's ways to shock.
But the thing is, it's not shocking anymore. When the nanny hangs herself for Damien at the birthday party, that was shocking.
Yes.
If you're going to redo it, what's the point of redoing it? You've already seen it before.
Right. That's why I mean, do something different with it.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's only been out a couple days. I mean, and I know we don't really talk about other platforms' ratings, but I mean, it's got okay ratings.
That's the thing. Like I several of the film critics that I follow, if you will, online and everything, they've rated it like 4 stars, 3.5, 4 stars. And
I mean,
I can't rate it that high. I just did not enjoy it that much.
Yeah, I mean, just looking at it now, I mean, Internet Movie Database gave this a 6.6 out of 10. Rotten Tomatoes 86%. And Metacritic is kind of in the middle with a 64%, but still, I mean, those are favorable ratings. And take those for what they are. I mean, I can't stand Rotten Tomatoes, but it's a thing, unfortunately. But
yeah, that's the thing that I miss having Leonard Maltin being prominent. Siskel and Ebert were fun.
Right.
They annoyed you sometimes because you disagreed with them.
Right.
But the thing I like about Leonard Maltin is no matter how much he hated a movie, he would always bring forth something positive about it.
Right.
And I'm trying to do the same thing. I'm not a critic. I'm just a guy who loves movies. And it's just troublesome how Hollywood keeps churning out movies that have to be at least 2 hours or longer. It's like you don't need to have a movie be that long.
Right.
So I saw Late Night with the Devil last week as well, and we will get into that probably in a couple weeks, but because I know you have Shudder and you can't wait to watch it.
No, I can't wait at all. I'm very.
I mean, that one,
that
was like an hour and a half.
Mm-hmm. Perfect.
It was perfect timing, and it's nothing wrong with that. You get your money's worth,
right?
If you are satisfied, it's like eating a meal. You want to be satisfied afterwards, right?
Right.
You don't want to have acid indigestion or being uncomfortable. I mean, I was kind of not full after watching. I felt like I ate a bunch of empty carbs. I mean, seriously, it's like, yeah, I was full, but it was empty carbs because I watched a 2-hour movie, which probably could have been about 75, 80 minutes. And again, there were some good shots, good atmosphere, but there was no need to drag it out for so long. Mm-hmm. There was just nothing interesting enough in the movie to warrant a 2-hour running time. It just really wasn't. I know you didn't see it.
I haven't seen it. I'll have to take your word on that. But like I said at the beginning of this show, a lot of that will just come down to poor editing.
Yeah.
We've
seen it. From Bohemian Rhapsody to the new Ghostbusters, even the newer Kong
and
Godzilla movies. There's a lot of editing issues. I mean, I still enjoy Godzilla and Kong because I can kind of take it for what it is, but bring back the magic of what these movies. I mean, the first Omen movie was a lot of fun. Right. Granted, there were things in that movie that were like, no.
It's a controversial movie. I mean, again, and this is a subgenre of the horror genre, the religious horror.
Yes.
That's very touchy, very controversial, and I'll admit right now, it's not really my thing. I do like some of the classic ones. Obviously, I love The Exorcist. I like the original Omen. I like Hellraiser. But there's a whole subgenre of religious horror.
Right.
And if it's not your thing, it's really off-putting.
Yeah. Well, in bringing, there was a lot of subtext with abortions in this movie too. I don't want to get into that too much, but there is a stance on abortions in there that will divide the audience when they're watching it. So. But again, I'd rate it 2.5 stars basically because there is some good shots in there. There's good atmosphere. I love how they redid the Oscar-winning song, which was done by Jerry Goldsmith. They used some of Ennio Morricone's music in good spots. Overall, though, it was not boring, but it kind of dragged a lot, and it could have been trimmed by 20 to 30 minutes, I thought.
So, moral of the story, kids, even though the actors and the directors get all the credit for the movie, it's your editor that makes or breaks your movie.
The studio can make or break your movie because you could have amazing editors.
Yeah.
I hate to keep bringing up Citizen Kane, Orson Welles, and the Magnificent Ambersons because Citizen Kane, Orson Welles got so much flack for it. So the second movie, Magnificent Ambersons, he did not have the creative control he once had. Mm-hmm. He shot the movie. It was 2 hours and 15 minutes worth of stuff. He had to go shoot a propaganda movie or some kind for Brazil or something, so he was out of the country. He trusted his editor, Robert Wise, who would later go on to do West Side Story, Sound of Music. And Robert Wise was forced by the studio to make cuts and re-edit the ending. Almost an hour and a half of the Magnificent Ambersons is gone.
Right.
Never to be seen again. And you could blame Robert Wise, but Robert Wise was basically pressured by the studio to do it. Mm-hmm. I don't think Robert Wise wanted to cut the movie.
Right.
It wasn't his movie to cut, but he was forced to do it. And people hated Robert Wise for it. It's like, okay, yeah, he was the editor. He had to do it, though. He was forced.
Right.
Otherwise, he probably wouldn't have been able to work and win 2 Academy Awards later on in his career.
Yeah.
It sucks, and I don't think Orson Welles ever used him again. It is what it is. He had to do it.
Right.
So editors, yes, they're responsible for the flow of the movie, but the studios have the final say in this. Now, if Ms. Stevenson actually made this movie on her own, they probably wouldn't have had to do all those cuts. And as a matter of fact, it was almost given an NC-17 rating because of the disturbing birthing sequence. I guess it was cut down from its original 13 seconds to its final form to receive an R rating. So I guess there was a longer cut of, yeah. Because I know what part, that's the part where Margaret is watching the demon hand come out. There was probably more shots of that, and they had to trim it down. Again, I know right now, Adam delved into the ratings overall consensus, and most people like it. I can't say I like it, but there are some promising things here for this director. I hope that she tries to do some movies on her own without the pressure of a studio. we'll just have to wait and see. But 2.5 stars for the first Omen. Arkasha Stevenson, that's a name we should pay attention to because she might actually do some brilliant work. We'll have to wait and see what Time does, though.
All righty.
So let us know what you think about the first Omen. If you vehemently disagree, feel free to comment below. We're on not only YouTube, but we're also on Instagram, Twitter X, and Facebook. Just reach out, and if you want us to talk about any one of your favorite movies, if you want to be part of the debate with, you want to see me hate a movie, you want to see Adam hate a movie, you want to see us argue, debate, well, throw a topic out there. Send us requests. Again, Scared for Reels, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter X, and also on YouTube.
We'll see you next time on Scared for Reels.